Hi, my cherished loves, and welcome to Entrepreneurship Now, the podcast for purpose driven entrepreneurs who are ready to attract aligned clients, build better systems, convert consistently, and scale with intention. I'm your host, LaShay LaRue, business strategist, and your coach for this season of growth. Today, I am so honored and so excited because I have an incredible thought leader who is in the mental health space to really help you align your mind, body, and energy so that we can accomplish those goals and show up present in our work and life and all the balance between the two. I have Miss Edna Balboa. I want you to go ahead and say hi to our audience.
Hello, hello. Yes. So I actually have had multiple business throughout my adulthood. And for the last several years, I've been in private practice. I'm Edna Balboa under Mindful Wellness with therapy. So I specialize in working with clients that experience anxiety, have experienced trauma, and really want to heal with that. And part of my journey is now creating a coaching component because, in very simple, basic terms, we go from therapy to healing it, but then we kind of need to learn how to thrive. So, with therapy, there's the medical necessity. And then with coaching, there's the what's next? How do I get to the next level? So, I'm going from one, I'll still be a therapist. I still have all of that, still have my education. I'll still work with clients in that way. But now I'm going to be able, in the short future, be able to offer more on the coaching side. So that way we can all focus on thriving. Yeah.
Absolutely love that. It is something that is so incredibly needed. I have worked with several therapists throughout my career, and that seems to be a very common theme of frustration among professionals that sometimes the therapeutic tool don't necessarily give you what you need to build for the future. It's a lot
Hmm.
of doing the work to assess your past and your current situation.
Right.
And coaching really allows you to have a lot more leeway in how you guide them through the next season for their life. So I love that. I love that you are providing solutions for that. But I want to take a step back for a second and tell us a little bit more about how you got into this space, right? What made
Mm.
you just start getting into therapy and holistic healing?
Well, a lot of it was personal to my own journey. I had depression very young, like as a child, and in my early 20s, seeked out therapy, but really didn't have a good fit. It was predominantly male, predominantly white, and I just didn't feel kind of seen or heard. In my 30s, my depression was much more intense. And again, back then I was going to my church and I felt like I was doing the right things. And then I seeked out another therapist and again, didn't feel a connection. And I really started focusing on myself, focusing on my mental health, on my reading a lot, exercise, nutrition, getting into those things. I finally did in my later 30s, found a good therapist that I could relate to. I liked him because he was just very matter of fact, and that was very helpful. And then I was in corporate America and kind of like in a lot of sales, and if you don't hit your quotas, you get laid off. And um, and then with what was going on in just the economy and the market at that time. And I had been working for a school as their director of community outreach for a couple of years, and they were going through lots of layoffs. And I'm like, I need to go back to school. And my 2 children, one of them was already out of high school, and my youngest, she was about to graduate from high school. I'm like, "Now's the time." And I looked into programs, I'm like, "I wanna be a therapist." So, I started the master's program in August and got laid off in November.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
You
So
saw the wall. I'm glad
I
you're proactive about that.
yeah, yeah, I knew it was probably gonna come because they had been doing layoffs, and I'm like, at some point, they're gonna get to at that point, I was in like a management role. I was a director. I'm like, at some point, they're coming for us. Um, and so in grad school, I also had to figure out how to support myself and be in grad school. And that's where I started one kind of more of a DBA, and it was called Body Flow Fitness. So I was a private yoga instructor, private personal trainer, and I also worked at gyms because that gave me a lot of flexibility to study, to go to school, and at some point I was going to have to do my practicum. So I became self-employed in that way during in my 40s. So that was kind of like I said, it wasn't an LLC, but it was a DBA that I did for several years, even up until 2019 was my very last client. That all it was personal training.
Oh, wow.
Um, so I
Okay.
kind of always had that on the side. And then being a therapist, I always knew I wanted private practice, but you don't just graduate and you get to do whatever you want. Being a therapist, you graduate, then you have to take a national counselor's exam. I tell people it's kind of like the bar. You can't work until you've taken this test, passed it, then you can work. And then you also have to work 3,000 hours under a supervisor.
Yeah.
So, and the way it was back then when I did it, you could not be in private practice until you completed those 3,000 hours. So
Mm,
they've changed it. You can be in private practice now as you work on the 3,000 hours, but back when I was doing it, you could not.
okay.
And so, yeah, so my goal was to get those 3,000 hours done as quickly as possible within the guidelines of what needed to and get as much experience as possible. Um, once I got fully licensed. I was working full time, but I had like a trickling, one or two clients. And then 2020 COVID came.
Mm,
And I was a clinical director of a treatment center, and it's privately owned, and it was really hard. Like, not everybody or businesses handled the pandemic differently.
right. Right.
And
That is.
I was very uncomfortable with how I was needing to show up for work. Um, you know, I was having everyone wear masks. We were learning how to do things virtually. And I was like, I just really need to do this for myself. So I think the pandemic hit in March of 2020. By May, I decided I need to work for myself solely. I grinded for 6 months of building up my clientele, working lots of hours because I had my full time job. And I'm like, I need at least 20 clients before I can quit my full time job. So that means working every evening, almost every weekend. And then November of November 2020, November 11th, 2020 was my first day fully employed as a private practice to myself.
Wow. To you, I absolutely love that. And, you know, COVID is one of those things that it affected the entire world, but as you a lot of people in a lot of different ways. Like you, that's also when I decided to go ahead and leave my 9 to 5 and go full self because it was just one of those things that it's time, right? And there was a definite need during that time. People didn't know how to really reach their audience when you can't reach your audience, when you can't go out and meet with them in person. And, a lot of people were left having to completely reimagine how they reach their audience and their business as a whole. So I'm completely with you when it comes to that. And I love that you shared the full experience. And I want my audience to really take a second to look at what she just shared with us. So, the very first thing is that she did not let an original plan stop her from going after what a dream was, right? Where she really wanted to be in life. She wanted to be a therapist and she went to school so that she can be a therapist. She put in the time that she needed to. But I want you guys to know that just because you have a degree, just like Edna, that can also still be a path to entrepreneurship. Just because degree doesn't mean that you automatically need to go and work a 9 to 5. And I really want you guys to get that, because just like how you were saying back then when you were at work, we're in a very unsettling time right now. Plenty of people who thought that they were in very stable industries. Everything that's happening with education right now, and the a number of people who are being laid off from the cushy jobs that we used to consider them to be. When you're in that place, it doesn't have to be the end of the world. It can just be the end of that season, and you can have something that is greater for you out there. You just have to be proactive about it. And I love that about your story, because you are the definition of that, of setting a plan, working your plan. And I love that you also set a goal. I tell people all the time, the best time to start a business is when you already have a job. And the reason being, you can make decisions for your business that are truly best for your business, not things that you're doing simply because that bill is about to be due. And it's a completely different mindset. So I love that you set the goal of, I need to have 20 clients. And when I have 20 clients, that's when I'll go ahead and I'll go full time. So thank you so much for being so transparent about that whole process. I know that you've spent quite a lot of time between personal training and yoga, and then you have this new career in therapy. How do you balance those two sides of your personality?
I actually integrate them. What I have found, especially for mental health, is physical health is very important. We really cannot have one without the other. They are two sides of the same coin. And so I even through therapy, I try to come from a very holistic approach. And I asked all of my clients, they are coming in for, like I said, anxiety, for trauma. But on our first session, I'm asking, how much sleep are you getting? How is your nutrition? How is your movement? How is your community? How is your spirituality? Because those are things that we personally can have an immediate effect on. I,
Yes.
I can choose to eat the apple instead of the bag of Doritos, right? And then I can get to some of the physical components of anxiety, the heart beating, the heaviness, the feeling like you can't breathe, the hands getting sweaty. It's all part of our nervous system. I use a lot of analogies and stories, and I kind of tell people a lot of what we need to do is basics, because we're kind of like cars running around. But if we're not taking care of our body, then it's kind of like driving a car with all four tires low on air.
Yes.
You're gonna get
Definitely.
there, but everything's very gonna be so much harder, and everything has to work harder to get there. And so with mental health, if I have anxiety, if I have depression, if I'm working through PTSD, but my body doesn't have all that it needs to work efficiently, therapy and or medication aren't going to be as efficient either.
Right. Right.
Right? So bringing it all in together is very important. And that's something that I learned for myself first, you know, working through myself, through my depression. The healthier I got, the more I got into fitness, the more I got into nutrition. Um, then I was able to take in all of that knowledge about how to rethink boundaries, of speaking up for myself, learning about how to express emotions. Whereas before, my physical just didn't have the capacity to integrate those things.
I
And so
love that you have created your own holistic approach and unique niche within the mental health space. We need to see a lot more of people creating creative solutions based off of their unique histories. And I also love that you practice what you preach. It's not like you just learn some concepts and you're just out there just trying to tell anybody and everybody this thing I just learned last Tuesday. These are things you've
yeah.
actually implemented within your life. And um, there are so many people now who are starting to be awakened to this concept of mental health. And it's
Mhm.
incredibly beautiful. But at the same time, people are starting to use words without
Yes.
fully understanding what these words mean. So I want to take a second to really talk about
Yeah.
these things. And to give our audience a little bit of advice about this. So one thing is the idea of mindfulness, right? I'm very
Mhm.
mindful. I'm considered a woke person. Give our audience a little bit more of a sounder definition of mindfulness,
Mm.
ways that they can actually practice being mindful.
Well, for me, mindfulness is our practices. We cannot, I don't think we're physically capable of being mindful 24/7,
Yes.
right? We have a lot of things going on. However, if I can take 2 minutes and be mindful and practice a mindfulness activity, then the rest of the time I can be in the present a little bit more.
Yeah.
So for me, like when I work with my clients, I'm like, when we're feeling overwhelmed, when we have the racing thoughts, if I can stop and focus, say, on one thing, I'll grab my water bottle, right? I'm going to look at my water bottle and I'm going to think about the color, the shape, the texture, the words on it, the scratches on it. I'm holding it in my hand, so the weight of it, the temperature of how it feels, everything I can possibly think about this water bottle. While I'm doing that, that is mindfulness. That is a mindfulness practice. I'm slowing down. I'm focusing on one thing. I'm thinking about the senses, my sight, touch, smell, taste. I can open it up, taste what's inside. Here, when my ring holds it, it makes a clanky noise. I'm bringing in my senses, and therefore that takes me out of the racing thoughts and all the what ifs and the should, coulda, wouldas. And then for this little bit of time, I am mindful. Exactly. I know my senses know where I'm at. I know where I'm at, and I'm actually here. I'm not in the future or in the past.
I
So
am
if I can
so
do that,
glad you did that. I'm so glad you walked us actually through a real life example of how we can start to practice being more mindful because, like you said, it's not necessarily a state of being. You're not
right,
consistently mindful every single day. And I think that's what has happened. We've started to use this word as if this is this new thing that I just am. And it's one part of a whole of everything that you are. There are
right.
so many things that are in there with mindfulness. And it's actually one of what you just went through was a technique that I recently started trying to implement. And it's so crazy. I never realized how much my mind really races throughout a given day. Like I know the anxiety. I know I consider myself to be a person who chase squirrels, right? Like I'm
Mhm.
doing this one thing, the squirrel, what's that over there? And oh, what's that over there? And did I close the door? And like that's how my brain works. But I
Yeah.
never really realized how difficult it is to turn that off. The
Mhm.
second that I started trying to sit down and be mindful and truly focus on a single thing, it was mind blowing for me. I was like, "Oh my gosh, maybe I just don't have really bad anxiety. Maybe, maybe I just need to calm down a little bit more about these things."
Yeah. It's even the breathing and taking a breath and doing that. So, like I said, that's a practice. The more I practice it, the more I can activate it when I need it. Right.
Love that. I love
And that's
that.
why we call them practices, because I tell people it's like sports, right? You don't hear about in every professional, these are the people that are at the top of their field, right? They're the best of the best. They have practice.
Hmm.
I don't care what sport, basketball, football, tennis. They have practice before a game. They don't show to the game saying, I'm the best, I got this. No, they are at practice for weeks ahead of the game.
Yes.
So, with
Yeah.
a lot of these mental health tools, we need to practice them. So, when we need them, or the game day, so to speak, a big day, something that you are anxious about, or it just something happens, you're able to pull those tools in because you have literally the muscle memory in your brain.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
And I love that practice concept. And not only
Mhm.
do they have practice, but they also have a coach who is helping
Absolutely.
them with their practice. I think that's really important to touch on because a lot of times people think, again, I read this thing, I heard this podcast, I saw this show, I watched
Mm.
this TikTok. I know how to do this. I can do this. It's not a
Mhm.
question about if you're capable of. Last time I checked, Michael Jordan and LeBron, hate them or love them, both had a coach throughout
Oh,
their entire career, right?
well,
And it's a reason. It's a
yeah.
reason. It's a reason why also, even when you think of your favorite actors, they also have coaches, right? Every aspect of life in any industry, you look at the most successful people and you take a look at what they're doing, they are practicing, they are learning, and they've got someone to help coach them through whatever season in life that they're currently in. So I'm so glad that you shared that. And along with the idea of mindfulness, there's another term that I see plastered all over events and everyone's constantly talking about on social: self care and self
Mhm.
love.
Yeah.
So I want you to share a little bit more about, again, your definitions for these things, what that can practically look like for our audience in practice.
So, yes, those have kinda gotten, I can't think that maybe bougie is it was the word that comes up to me. But there are ways some of them can be self-care, but not in the way that necessarily everyone thinks. So, can a pedicure be self-care? Yes, but not just because you're getting your toes fancy. It's you're caring for your body. Someone is helping you care for your body, so you're actually hiring someone to help you, but you're also taking that time out for yourself. You're not multitasking most of the time, you know. So in that ways, it can be. But then also what people don't realize about self-care is speaking up for yourself, saying no, being assertive with your communication. That is not being mean. I heard that all the time. Oh, that sounds so mean. No, that is being assertive and that is self-care. Having boundaries is self-care. Realizing that my time, my intellect, my energy, my body, my money, those are my resources. And I need to keep myself full and only share the overflow. That is self care.
I love that. I love
Yeah.
that because you can't show up for people from a cup that's half full or completely or half empty or completely empty, right?
Right?
And a
Exactly.
lot of times people think
Mm.
that if they just do this thing, then they'll feel better. And that's not necessarily the case if you're not healing the root cause of whatever it's going on. I know I think it's perfect that you use the example of pedicures because I was always one of those girlies. I actually really hate the salon. I do. Because you just said it, the multitasking, right? It's not
Yeah.
fair if you're multitasking and I'm
Yeah.
frustrated because I'm trying to take a call and I'm thinking about the work stuff that I needed to do. And this lady got my hair and
Yeah.
it's just a lot. And it was more anxiety causing than relieving. So,
Mhm.
I think that's really important for us to remind ourselves that self-care is more focused on the care part of it and caring for whatever's going on with us internally. So
Mhm.
thank you so much for that. Thank
Yeah.
you because I think these are important conversations that we really need to have.
Right.
And you have compiled all of this within your business. And I know that for
Absolutely.
you right now, you are in the growth phase.
Yeah.
You have done the hard work, you've established your foundation, you're at that point where you're building momentum, you're scaling your offers. What have been some of the biggest lessons about showing up consistently for your business in this growth phase?
Being flexible. Being flexible. So I can share. So I opened my practice in 2020 and I was subleasing an office with other therapists. Did that for about a year. And then I'm like, you know what? I want to be able to offer yoga. I want to have groups. I want to have workshops. So then I rented a space. So I rented an office space that I had a yoga room. I had an office. I had an extra office to rent out. I had a kitchen. Um, and I did that. And I had book clubs and I loved it. And I'd have events and those were fun. But I was like, okay, now I'm tied and I have this rent that to pay and I'm tied. And then I started seeing, even though I was centrally located, a lot of my clients were still doing virtual because of time. You know, if I have a 1 hour appointment, I need a minimum 30 minutes to get there, 30 minutes to get back to where I am. So when I started looking at my numbers, So the business part, we forget, even as whatever we are, whether it's a therapist or whatever, there's always the business component. And I started looking at it and said, okay, 48% of my clients are virtual. That's a big number.
It is.
And so I decided, you know what? I am going to close the office space and just do virtually only and see what happens. And I did lose a few clients. They're like, oh, I only wanted to come in person. That was my me time. And I completely understand. So I referred them out to someone who did have an office and I went virtual. I offer on, I haven't this summer because it's hot, but I do offer walk and talks in the spring and in the fall if someone really wants to do that. But also, I allowed myself to travel. So in 2024, I spent a month in Spain and worked remotely there, still seeing my clients, but being in Spain. I spent 2 weeks in Portugal. I spent 5 weeks in Mexico City, all while still exploring myself, but being able to maintain my business.
That is my dream. I love that.
Yeah, it was wonderful. And I brought my clients along the ride with me. I'm like, here's where I am now. And also but I'm also here for you. I'm still doing what I need to do. And for 2025, one of my things that I've decided is to grow into the coaching, create a second business into coaching. So this is my growth. For me, I chose not to grow into a group practice. I did not want to be in charge of other people. And I chose not to hire. Again, I didn't want to get into the management phase. My favorite part is the one on one working with people. So I want to figure out ways to do more of that. I think that's important. We need to figure out what we enjoy, what we like doing the most, and make, for me, that I always try to make that 80% of my job. 20% is the paperwork I don't like to do, right? And so one of the things that kept coming up being licensed in having a license in any state, but in the state of Texas, and almost honestly for therapists, it's wherever you are, you're licensed to that state. If a client moves away, I can't keep working with them.
Hmm.
They have to start over with someone else.
Yeah.
And as a coach, those restrictions aren't there.
Yes.
So I can, and also I can only, as a therapist, I can only work with people that live in Texas.
Yeah.
So as a coach, I can work with people anywhere. And so what I have found is, and also again, what I want to focus on in coach is that growth and thriving in our lives. So when I've gone through with some mental health clients or some therapy clients, and we get to all of that, that's kind of where we end.
Yeah. And that's
And then,
tough. It's tough for them too, because they were probably
absolutely.
or in a really safe space with you, right? If you've
Yeah,
been working for some time, you've worked through some things. So that I can imagine that being very tough for you and for them to have to start
absolutely.
over.
Well, yeah, especially like with clients that they move to another state and then they need to recreate community, recreate so much in their life, but then they're also losing a lifeline.
Yeah.
So for coaching for me, and also being able to focus on specific things, like one of the things that I'm creating a program for in my coaching line is specifically for postmenopausal women. And it's also very much in that point of how do I thrive in this part of my life? And so this is where I say I'm growing. I will never stop being a therapist. My therapy business, mindful wellness will be a constant. But to be able to grow into a more direction, I started the new LLC of Edna Balboa Holistic Coaching and Yoga because yoga is my longest relationship. I've been a yoga instructor for 22 years. It's my biggest love, and it goes into both things that I do. It's part of my lifestyle,
It's perfect.
and so yes, growing into this. So for me, growing my company meant starting another company.
That's perfect.
Yeah,
That's perfect.
yeah,
And one of the biggest things that came up in my spirit as you were talking is that word again, alignment.
yeah.
A lot of times when we think of alignment, we think of clients that are aligned with us personality wise, but
Mm,
that's not necessarily the case. Alignment within your business is what Edna just described. It's deciding what services you're going to offer because this is what I like, this is what I don't like. Just because something has an opportunity to make you a lot of money doesn't mean that that's something that you need to add within your business. Why? Because if you don't enjoy it, it's going to be miserable. And why?
Mhm.
Put in the effort that it takes to be an entrepreneur for something that you absolutely hate. Like there's a difference between something not being your biggest passion and truly hating something, right?
Right.
If you don't like to manage people, then don't manage people, right?
Mm.
If you don't like being front and center in the face of something, then hey, maybe that's not something that you need to add in your business. There are plenty of ways that you can show up for your business with faceless reels, right? As an
Mhm.
example. So I love that. I love that you made the decisions based off of analyzing yourself,
Yeah.
your personal passions, and your personal capacity. Um, you and traveling and seeing your clients and doing the whole thing virtually, girl, you were singing to my heartstrings. That is my absolute dream.
Mm.
I have maps and globes all over my house because I needed it as a constant reminder that that is the goal. That is the goal. Do not set up roots. You need to
Mhm.
be able to be flexible and you need to be able to move around. So I'm definitely with you on that. And
Mhm.
that one of the beautiful things of the time that we live in. And it's one of the best parts. And it's not a whole lot of good that came out of COVID, but that is one good thing that came, that it made people a lot more comfortable with the concept of remote work, with the
Yeah.
concept of remote meetings. Like I, my experience with the podcast, I do have access to a studio, but I choose to have my interviews on Zoom so that people don't have scheduling conflicts,
Right.
so that I can reach people who don't live in my immediate area and I can tell the stories of entrepreneurs all across the world, not even just in the
Mhm.
US, but literally all over the world. And that's something that I never imagined when I first started into business and having it as a regular, especially coming from the real estate world. And having a meeting online is like, what? That's weird. Why would you not just
Yeah.
go have coffee or have lunch or have dinner?
Mhm.
That's weird. But after COVID, that's kind of like the standard.
Yeah.
You got to be motivated to go outside of that standard. Like if I'm getting in my car, I'm getting in my car with firm purpose. I am volunteering or I am eating. Those are really the two big reasons if you want me to get in my car. So
Yeah.
I love that. I love that you created a structure within your business that met what you wanted out of life. And I encourage anyone listening to do the exact same thing. Now, in order for that to work, in order for that to
Mhm.
be a thing, you're going to need clients, right? You're going
Yes.
to need clients to fund
Absolutely.
trips, to fund
Mm.
that lifestyle. So let's talk a little bit more about that. And what are some of let's go with the worst and the best marketing techniques that you've done or
Mm.
for getting clients.
Well, I think for being a therapist, I think one of the things that I attribute to some of my success and be able to get clients is being specific and knowing that I am not for everyone, and that's okay. So we, as a lot of therapists, mental health professionals in general, we have Psychology Today, right? So anybody can go on their computer, go to Psychology Today and look for a therapist. We have bios on there. My bio is going to turn some people off, and then it's going to attract others.
Yeah.
I have phrasing in my bio. I have yoga in my bio. I have feminist theory. I have that I work with BIPOC and LGBTQ community. And so I know before someone, if they found me on Psychology Today and they actually call me to set up a consultation, I already know that there's some things there that attracted them to me. Otherwise, they would not have, if they do read it all, they are not going to call me.
Yes.
And kind of going into that alignment.
Yes.
Like, we don't have to be the same, but there are certain values that I do think are important. It's not about my values as a therapist, but it goes into the techniques I use and the belief systems that we set into place in therapy. So, I actually am a LPCS with licensed professional counselor supervisor. So I supervise those that are still working on their clinical hours, those 3,000. And that's one of the things I really tell them is it's okay to show parts of yourself. So that way, when you get a possible client, the rapport is there. That is one of the most biggest tools in therapy is having good rapport with your clients. That's more effective than any other therapy technique.
Couldn't
And
agree more.
so, yes, so that is something that really is important as far as marketing and being authentic.
Knowing who your audience is and speaking directly to them is an incredibly powerful technique. I'm so glad that you embody that within your business because you're true. It's true. You're right.
Yes.
Everybody isn't for everybody, and that's okay.
Yeah.
We have to get out of this mindset of people pleasing, of having or trying to show up and being afraid of the negative feedback and being afraid of losing the one client. What God has for me, He has for me. Nobody can take it
Absolutely.
away. Nobody can anything for that. And I'm not going to try to hold on to something that I don't need to be holding on to. Why hold on to clients that you are not aligned with on a personal level, right?
Yeah.
If someone isn't okay or isn't comfortable with you being a female business owner, why would
Hmm.
you want to work with that person?
Yeah.
But put your face out there. Put your face out there. Let people know who you are, what it is that you stand for, and let them choose to opt out. That way, you don't have really what it does is it saves you a lot of the stress on the back end. Then
Hmm.
it saves you from the uncomfortable conversation of somebody saying something completely rude to your face because you didn't have that pre-screening, right? They didn't have the opportunity to opt out prior to you guys having that first meeting. So I'm glad that you brought that up because I feel like a lot of people are afraid of that. They think that it's going to hurt their business. And I promise you, it'll help more times than it will ever hurt your business. You can't look at whoever did decide to opt out as a bad thing. And
Yeah.
I'm saying that and I'm advocating for that, but that was something that I had to learn myself as well. As a Black woman, and when I first started in corporate America, I was very young at that time. So to
Yeah.
be young, Black, and a woman, it was like three negatives against you, and that would be considered very unprofessional. And it's like now I'm in this comfortable space that I am now, and I'm like, how could you have ever thought that your
Yeah.
existence was unprofessional? Like, but I mean, that's the state of our world. Like, it sounds
Yeah.
crazy to say, but that is a reality that a lot of people are dealing with. And I had to have that moment. It was a moment I literally was praying about my situation and praying about all the things that I was feeling inside of me. And God just placed this sense of ease. And that's what came to me. It was like, if a person doesn't want to work with you because they don't like the color of your skin, they're uncomfortable with your age, and they don't like your gender, why on earth would
Hmm.
you want to work with them? Do you
Yeah.
understand that that is going to be a nightmare every day that you work with that client? And it was just like this calming moment that I was like, that makes sense. That
Yeah.
sense. I'm not the problem, right? My existence is not the problem. It's something that I need to fall into, not push away from. So for anybody out there who is in a place where you aren't sure if your aesthetics are appealing enough or how people will feel if you're a woman owned business or a minority owned business or whatever it is, you don't want to chase people who don't want to work with you.
Yeah.
You don't want to spend time, or in my opinion, waste time working with people who are not aligned with you. They're not going to give you a good review. They're going to push back on the entire process of whatever you guys are working with. It is going to be very difficult for that to work out. So I love that you were able to bring that up as a part of your business because it's
Yeah.
good to know that it's something that you do, and it is definitely something that our audience definitely needs to know. And you've covered so many of the important topics that we like to cover here. We've
Mhm.
talked about attracting the ideal client. We've talking about
Yeah.
creating that alignment. We've talking about the building of the systems and how you were able to be remote, travel, see the world, and
Hmm.
take your clients on that journey and all the many ways that you're scaling. I thank you so much for your time here today. I hope my audience enjoyed this conversation
Yeah.
even half as much as I did. It is always a pleasure. I am so grateful for the day that I met you and that you were able
Yeah.
to share your story. Thank you. And to everyone watching, thank you for your time as well. Until next time, bye, my cherished loves. Okay.